I think that several things coincided on the Atlantic fringe of Britain and in North Wales. I mean, the first was that the process of reforming the countryside, which had started in the area close to London in the late 17th century, spread out to the Celtic fringe by the early 19th century. So the landscape was changing. The landowners wanted to change their relationship with peasant farmers. And so peasant farming was no longer economic, and so it had to go. And that in itself created tensions. Now, in some places, those tensions were particularly acute because the landowners were not seen as locals. In Ireland in particular, they were seen as part and parcel of the Anglo ascendancy. And indeed, Ireland should be seen as part of the British Empire's overseas colonies at this time. It wasn't a heartland place at all. It was a state under full colonisation. But the other thing that's happening is that parts of these areas also include cities, like, for example, Glasgow, and areas in South Wales, which were characterised by mining, in which industrialisation was happening, it was going on at full pace at the same time as the countryside was changing.
In short, Britain and its empire is racked with dissension and rebellion and protest throughout the decades from the late 18th century through to really the 1850s and 60s. And for that reason, they pass new laws to quell that. Those laws create criminals, felons of these protesters. In some cases, they are prisoners of war, but in many cases, they're treated as common criminals. These people are transported as punishment, exemplary punishment, at a time when all could not be necessarily caught and tried. They're also transported to quell down, to quieten down neighbourhoods. Many times people are sentenced to hang and they are transported as an act of clemency, and that ties their families to the system, if you like, of the local village and town, or of the colonial administration in Ireland, or to the government in terms of granting them pardons from hanging, to the clemency of the king. So there's a system in place to remove the troublemakers, but also to quieten down and decapitate these radical movements, to take out their leadership, to take out the best and brightest and the bravest. People like Michael Dwyer, the United Irishman, people like George Lovelace, the Tolpuddle Unionist, people like Frost, the Chartist, people that are prepared to stand up and fight despite danger to themselves, people that are prepared to sacrifice their own liberty. And by removing them, you put the frighteners on other people left in those communities.
The British establishment at the time were the imperialists, they were the aristocrats, they were the people who wanted to rule the world, whereas the ordinary working people of England had the same problems and the same complaints as the ordinary working people of Ireland, of Wales, of Scotland. And the British were in Ireland and Wales and Scotland, and they were in charge, and they were making things difficult for people. So it's a very important distinction. It's the British Empire, not the English Empire. There is an argument to be made, and I know Scots, Welsh and Irish people watching this will disagree with me, but there is an argument to be made that England was the first colony of the British Empire. This goes absolutely to the core of a lot of the politics of Chartism, of the swing rioters, of the machine breakers. You know, they talk about the pre-Norman laws of England, the laws of Edward the Confessor, the laws of Alfred the Great. And Great Britain, in some ways, is a corporate imposition on top of that English tradition. You have to see what's being done to working people in England as part of the British establishment rather than the English establishment.
The first half of the 19th century are often known as the Angry Decades, and it's to do with intermittent economic recession, but also an intensification of the Industrial Revolution and the continued privatisation of land, the Agricultural Revolution. So we have, after the Napoleonic Wars, returned soldiers and sailors flooding the market at the same time as new modes of mechanisation are actually reducing the need for quite so many people in the agricultural industries, things like thresher machines, and obviously steam-powered factories actually require less work, but more importantly an intensification and a change in the way you work. Well, unemployment was growing, but people felt they had less control over their working lives, and that the customary way they worked and the old moral economy was being rent asunder. And as we know, there's famous stories of people crowding into cities like Manchester and to parts of Wales from the countryside to find work in the new factories. But we also have a depopulation in the countryside where people are losing their customary rights, their rights to common land, land is being enclosed, but also their access to game to supplement the diet, because there are the so-called black acts that make crimes punishable by death and later transportation for, going fishing and many of the things that people had done for hundreds of years. So all of these things combine with a colonial overtone as well, particularly in Wales and Scotland, where things are run from the centre, from London. There's an alliance, if you like, between educated middle-class liberals and artisans and working people to push through the Great Reform Bill in 1832. Now that only extends the franchise to people of property, so the vast majority of workers are still excluded. So they feel like, well, we can't rely on liberals and the upper classes to help us, so we have to do it ourselves.